So now we're on to week 2 of our shirt. This week we're going to be doing the back, and we're going to start to prep the sleeve for next week. So you are going to need pieces 11, which is the side back, 12, which is the center back, 13, which is the back yoke. That'll be for the Tuesday and Wednesday. And then for Thursday and Friday, you'll need 14, which is the sleeve, and 15, which is the band. Okay, so I'm going to put the sleeve aside, and let's just talk about the first steps for this week. So you want to go through just like you did with your front, and you want to snip all your notches. On piece 13, you want a tailor tack where your sleeve curve is going to set in. That's going to be an important one. On your center back, you just have the one notch. And again, you have to be careful here because this is a princess seam that's slightly shaped. Princess seams are always used to really shape the body, just so you know when you go to draft or to drape. That if you really want to get a curved shape and fit nice to the body, the princess is usually a really good choice because you can get it really shaped well. And then your side back, you'll need your notch here that will match up to the center back, and you will need your other notches too. There's no other markings on here. So notches on this and one tailor tack, and let's get sewing. As a little refresher, you're now going to put in your seams for the back. So there, I'll demonstrate on my yoke. So on the yoke, I'm going to press it. Again, this is the right side of my fabric, so it's the side that will be outside. I've stitched my seam at 5/8 of an inch. I'm now going to trim this back at least in half, a tiny bit more. Again, I'm in a little bit of an awkward position, so. And then once I have that trimmed, I'm going to take my seam and press it over. And I'm going to take my seam allowance, fold it over my little seam allowance, and stitch it down. With the back yoke, I'm going to go to the right. Okay, it really doesn't matter which way you go. I'm just going to put it over to the right. Okay, so I'm going to put my seams in my yoke, going to flat fill them, and then I'm also going to put them in my back. So I've sewn my back, my center back, to my sides. I'm going to do the same thing, press them open, trim them back, and then flat fill them, and I'm going to my side seam. So now I flat filled my backs, my center back and my side backs together, and I've flat filled my yoke, and now I've attached my yoke to my body, which is my center back and my side backs. Okay, so now at this seam, I'm going to press it open. I'm going to trim off the one that's closest to the yoke, and I'm going to fold the seam up to stitch it. Okay, so again, we want to make sure that we're going the same direction as the front. So this one, the seam that folds over and gets top stitched is the one that comes from the body of the garment. The one that gets trimmed back is the seam allowance off the yoke. Please make sure that you're exactly 5/8 of an inch here. This is where your sewing has to be really accurate, because at this gesture, you're impacting the size of your armhole. So you want to make sure that that's exactly at 5/8, which is what it was drafted at, so that you maintain that length of your armhole. Okay? And next step is to attach your back to your front at your shoulder. So now we're starting to see a shirt emerge. So you're going to do the same thing. You're going to flat fill the seam. You're going to sew your shoulders. Again, this is wrong sides together. You're sewing wrong sides together. And you're going to trim. On this one, you'll trim off the back so that again, press it open, trim it, and then press it back. You're going to the back here and turn under, so your seam will go to the back. So you're going to do that on both shoulders, and then you'll do the same thing on the side seam. You'll sew your front and your back together. This is my front, this is my back. I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm always going to keep pushing back with this. So I'm going to trim off the back, and I'm going to fold the front over the back at the side seam. Okay, so front goes over the back at the side seam, and the front goes over the back at the shoulder. Okay, and that will wrap up the first part of this week's lesson. So we got the shirt together, and the seams are flat filled, and now we'll get into working on the details. So now your shirt is put together. The front is nice and neat, pockets are nice and straight, everything's pressed. Make sure you put your garment on a hanger at this point. Don't fold it off or shove it into your backpack. Side seams are in, everything's neatly top stitched and pressed, and of course that beautiful back, which has the nice yoke, flat felled stitched detail that separates the two parts in the center.